Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. After a quiet move to Timber Ridge, Professor Rains spots a camera pointed straight into his bedroom window. Ignored by the HOA, he dismantles it, only to ignite a suburban war of surveillance, secrets, and digital justice that's about to explode. Welcome to Peep Ridge. I wasn't looking for trouble when I bought the house. After the divorce, all I wanted was quiet, real quiet, the kind that seeps into your bones and drowns out courtroom drama, passive-aggressive texts, and the sound of your own pulse going off like a metronome every time you remember your ex still has your vinyl collection. So I moved to Timber Ridge. Not into the HOA, no. I made sure of that. My parcel was just outside their jurisdiction, close, but not a member. That was the point. The house itself was charming in a non-Instagram kind of way. 2 stories of weathered cedar and honest creeks. A wide second-floor bedroom window that caught the sunrise like a lighthouse. I unpacked my boxes slowly, 1 floor lamp and criminology textbook at a time. No rush. I was building solitude. It took 5 days before I noticed it. At first, I thought it was a reflection, a shimmer off a raindrop, but that little black bulb staring at my bedroom window wasn't nature. It was a security camera, mounted high on a light pole just on the other side of the invisible line that separated my private haven from Timber Ridge Estates, land of ornamental lawns and passive HOA warfare. And the camera? It wasn't angled at the street, or the sidewalk, or even the cul-de-sac. It was aimed squarely at me. I closed the blinds that night and tried to forget it, chalked it up to paranoia. Occupational hazard, maybe, but old habits die hard. I waited until 3 a.m., turned out the lights, and peeked between the slats. The damn thing was glowing, red and faint, but definitely alive, watching. The next morning, I walked the perimeter. Sure enough, the pole was on a strange patch of easement, half wrapped around my tree line. Property lines can be fuzzy around here, like morals at a lobbying convention. Still, it was technically theirs. Barely. I called the HOA office. Polite, professional, full Professor Rains mode. A young guy answered, transferred me. Then her voice. I didn't need a name. I knew a Karen when I heard one. Mr. Rains, she said, with that cheerful threat only HOA types can master. The cameras are for community safety. It's nothing personal. I asked if the camera could be re-angled. I'm afraid not. We have a standard sweep protocol. I told her the camera was directed straight into my second-floor bedroom window. She paused. Well, perhaps you should consider blackout curtains. It's not our responsibility to adjust infrastructure to individual tastes. I smiled like a man picturing a fire and calmly hung up. For the next 2 nights, I kept the blinds shut and the lights off. But every time I looked, the lens was there, unmoving, but oppressive, like a peeping mechanical cyclops. I wanted to believe it was an oversight. I wanted to believe that maybe Timber Ridge Estates had some harmless security policy with unfortunate geometry, but I've spent 2 decades studying privacy law, surveillance methods, and criminal deviance. Cameras don't randomly focus. People do. 3 days. That's how long I lasted before the curiosity, no, the unease, pushed me into action. By day 4, I wasn't just closing my curtains. I was timing when I moved past the window. Something about that lens made my skin crawl. I'd catch it in my peripheral vision, a matte black orb like a watching eye, just barely moving when I did. Maybe it was the angle, or maybe it was the feeling I was starring in a surveillance drama I didn't audition for. So I tested a theory. I set up a cheap motion-activated heat sensor just inside my bedroom window, one of those thermal anomaly testers I used back in my forensics days. I positioned it facing the HOA camera pole and waited. That night, I turned on my bedside lamp, walked past the window, and paused. The sensor blinked red. Something out there shifted. Not just a twitch, more like a deliberate pan. I ran it again the next night, this time recording everything on my own camcorder, fixed just behind the blinds. Same result. When I moved, the HOA camera moved too. Not automatically. No, the angle change had hesitation, rhythm, human rhythm. Someone was watching, manually adjusting that lens. That was the moment the unease curdled into rage. The next morning, I mapped the field of view from that camera. I used survey flags, a laser pointer, and a very skeptical friend from my law school days named Curtis, who I bribed with steak and whiskey. We calculated the line of sight intersecting directly with my second-floor window. He looked at the math, then at me. Yeah, he said, they're not watching for burglars. They're watching you. I took photos, one during the day with the camera's direction clearly marked, and one at night with the infrared light piercing the darkness like a sniper's scope. I compiled a neat little folder labeled Exhibit A, Welcome to Peep Ridge. Then I tried one last time. I emailed the HOA with the evidence attached, requesting, again, that they re-angle the camera or mask out my property. A polite version of, "Quit watching me shower." No response. The next day, Curtis found a message in the public HOA Facebook group. It was from her, Karen Blight, president, nuisance, and apparently part-time voyeur. She wrote, "That new neighbor has a real problem with transparency. What's he hiding? All we're doing is protecting our community. If you ask me, he's acting very paranoid." The post had a dozen likes and a thread of smug comments. One even joked about calling the police before he sets up a meth lab. I wasn't just angry now. I was insulted. That evening, under Curtis's watchful eye, I walked to the easement where the pole stood. Half of it was planted firmly on Timber Ridge land, but the other half leaned over onto my tree line. The bolts holding the camera mount were drilled into a support bracket that extended into my airspace. I had measured it twice. I brought my cordless drill, a wrench, and a GoPro. Curtis filmed while I carefully unfastened the bracket and detached the camera unit, placing it gently into a padded toolbox. No damage, no malice, just retrieval of a foreign object illegally invading my home. I left a polite note taped to the pole. This device was removed due to invasion of private residential space. It is being preserved as potential evidence. Please contact Adam Rains if you would like to discuss this like adults. We walked back inside. I poured whiskey for both of us. Curtis raised his glass. "Well," he said, "that's one way to introduce yourself to the neighborhood." I nodded and stared at the darkened window where the blinking red eye no longer glowed. Let them come. They came for me 2 days later. Not in the dead of night like some dystopian horror flick, but at 10 in the morning on a Tuesday, while I was sipping coffee and grading student essays on criminal behavior. Ironic, really. I saw the patrol car roll up through the front window, slow and deliberate, as if the officer expected resistance. The knock was sharp, procedural. "Mr. Rains?" he asked. I nodded. "Depends. Am I being arrested or just gently threatened?" He didn't smile. He handed me a notice, search warrant, property seizure, specifically, an item of surveillance hardware allegedly removed from its original location. The camera, of course. Karen had filed a formal police report stating I'd destroyed shared HOA property, claiming damages of approximately $3,200. According to her, I had aggressively and unlawfully dismantled a security asset in a threatening act. Against the community. Aggressively. I'd unscrewed 4 bolts. Threatening. I'd left a note with my phone number and a borderline friendly tone. The officer, to his credit, wasn't hostile. He even asked where the device was. I showed him to the padded toolbox in my study and handed over the GoPro footage along with my copy of the measurements, photos, and email correspondence. He skimmed through the material like a man realizing he was sent on a fool's errand. "No, you're not under arrest," he finally said. "We're just executing the warrant. The DA will decide next steps." "How about the law?" I asked, not really expecting an answer. "You know, the one about filming someone's private residence without consent?" That little detail. He didn't respond, just nodded and left with the camera, a copy of my files, and probably the growing suspicion that this wasn't going to end well for someone named Karen. I didn't waste time. I called my attorney, Savannah Lowe, a privacy rights specialist who'd once chewed up a corporate surveillance firm so thoroughly they changed their entire PR team and paid damages under NDA. I trusted her with my life, and now, apparently, my bedroom. Within 24 hours, she had filed a counterclaim. The basis? Illegal surveillance under Oregon state law, violation of privacy, emotional distress, and property encroachment. She even tossed in a request for injunctive relief. No more cameras pointed at my home, ever again. The local newspaper didn't care about nuance. They got wind of the police report and ran with the headline, "Professor accused of vandalizing HOA camera in quiet Timber Ridge." They even published a photo, taken I assumed from HOA members, of me holding the toolbox like I was smuggling nuclear secrets. The article quoted a source close to the HOA board who said I was erratic, paranoid, and potentially dangerous. Subtle. But the best part? The flyer. It appeared on every mailbox in Timber Ridge, mine included. A grainy photo of me walking to my driveway with the words, "Do you know who your neighbor is?" Adam Rains, known to tamper with security equipment and threaten community safety. Remain vigilant. I'd seen smear campaigns in politics. Never thought I'd get one from a suburban knitting committee with too much free time. Savannah didn't flinch. She drafted a press release and had me record a 2-minute video that night. In the video, I laid it all out. Showed the angle of the camera, the infrared footage through the blinds, the zoning map proving my property stood outside HOA authority. I read directly from Oregon Revised Statute 163-700, which clearly states that surveillance aimed into a person's private home without consent is a criminal offense. Then I looked straight into the camera and said, if protecting my privacy makes me dangerous, then maybe this neighborhood should take a long, hard look at who's really in charge. We uploaded it to YouTube, Reddit, and a local watchdog forum. By morning, it had 10,000 views and counting. And for the first time in this quiet war, the court of public opinion started to tilt in my direction. The HOA wanted a fight. They'd just stepped into a spotlight they weren't ready for. Timber Ridge HOA had no idea who they'd picked a fight with. The morning after the video went live, my inbox was a war zone. Journalists, law students, privacy advocates, and bizarrely, one guy who wanted to license the footage for a techno music video. The clip had cracked 50,000 views in under 24 hours. The comment section read like a public therapy session for suburban surveillance victims. Meanwhile, Karen doubled down. She issued a HOA-wide statement claiming my video was deceptively edited, that I'd doctored evidence, and that the camera had never recorded anything inside a residence. She invoked phrases like safety protocols, community resilience, and, my personal favorite, ungrateful outsider, classy. Savannah was already 3 steps ahead. She subpoenaed the HOA's surveillance system backend through a discovery motion in our civil case. The judge approved it faster than I expected. Probably helped that we included photos of the camera's view line directly hitting my window and a time-stamped infrared video showing movement inside my home. Then, the break came. An anonymous email hit Savannah's office inbox. It was from a contractor, name redacted, who had previously managed Timber Ridge's camera system. The message was short, blunt, and contained a zipped file titled admin logs hosystem.json. That file was a gold mine. Inside were detailed logs from the HOA camera system, every IP login, timestamp, and camera movement command. Most damning of all, logs showing that user Karen B. Admin had accessed the system 17 times in the last month, each session involving manual zooms and pans on camera unit 4, the one pointed directly at my house. 17 times. That wasn't safety. That was obsession. Savannah contacted the local cybercrime unit, and suddenly things escalated. Now there was talk of criminal liability, unauthorized digital access, surveillance abuse, possibly even stalking, depending on how the DA interpreted state law. But Karen wasn't just fighting in the courtroom. She was still waging her PR campaign, planting stories in the local HOA newsletter. One issue featured a cartoonish caricature of me holding a drone remote, peering into windows. The caption read, "When the Watchers Cry Privacy." Real Pulitzer material. I didn't just get mad, I got methodical. We compiled a public dossier, every legal document, zoning map, and copy of the HOA's own bylaws. Then we built a simple website and posted it all, time-stamped and cross-referenced. Savannah called it Digital Self-Defense. I called it Public Castration HOA Edition. It worked. Emails from other residents began trickling in, some supportive, others hesitant. But then one neighbor, Emily, single mom, 2 houses down, sent a message I didn't expect. Karen asked if she could access the footage on our shared fence camera a few months ago, said it was for neighborhood watch compliance. I said no. She installed her own camera the next week, facing our patio. I met with Emily over coffee. She wasn't just nervous, she was angry. Turns out she'd complained about Karen before, to the board, and been ignored. Twice. It became clear I wasn't the first target. The camera issue was just the latest chapter in Karen's rule by paranoia saga. HOA members were scared, silenced, or complicit, so we shifted strategy. Savannah filed an amendment expanding our case to include patterned harassment and abuse of authority. We requested the HOA release internal correspondence about the camera program. And just to twist the knife, I contacted a well-known YouTube legal analyst with 2 million subscribers. I gave him full access to the story and the logs. Within a week, he posted a breakdown titled HOA Caught Spying on Professor's Bedroom. You won't believe what they did next. 300,000 views in 48 hours. The comments weren't kind to Karen, but my favorite part, the email from a retired judge who wrote, "They don't just have a civil problem, they have a prosecutable one." And Timber Ridge. The cracks were showing. Council members were quietly resigning. 2 security cameras were found mysteriously disconnected, and according to Emily, a neighborhood Facebook group had split into 2 factions, Team HOA and Free Ridge. The best part? I hadn't even walked into a courtroom yet. They say court is where truth goes to die slowly in procedural agony. Maybe that's true in most cases, but this one felt more like a public exorcism. It started with the preliminary hearing. Karen walked in flanked by 2 lawyers in $1,000 suits and a smile that could sterilize houseplants. She wore a pastel pantsuit and the expression of someone who thought she'd win with posture alone. I nodded at her once. She didn't nod back. The courtroom itself was modest. No grand jury box or sweeping balconies. Just tan walls, tired chairs, and the smell of coffee burned into the carpet. But even in that beige purgatory, the tension was sharp enough to cut glass. Savannah wasted no time. She requested a temporary restraining order preventing any HOA-controlled surveillance from pointing within 20 feet of my home, pending outcome. She also requested Karen personally refrain from any public commentary on me or the case, citing the flyers and social media slander. Karen's lawyer objected, of course, claimed it was a violation of her free speech rights as a community leader. The judge, bless his tired soul, looked over his glasses and said, "Ma'am, leadership doesn't include libel." Motion granted. Outside the courthouse, cameras waited. Not the HOA kind, the press kind, local news crews, a couple freelance bloggers, one guy with a selfie stick and a neckbeard who asked, "So, are you like the Edward Snowden of HOAs?" I didn't answer. That night, Savannah and I went over our exhibits again. Thermal images, footage of the camera following my movement, the app logs showing the 17 zoom-ins, the subpoenaed HOA emails, some of which were just gold. One in particular from Karen to a board member. "He's hiding something. No man buys a house like that just to live alone. I want eyes on that window at all times." Her words, her email. We entered trial phase 2 weeks later. Opening arguments were polite, polished, and full of phrases like reasonable expectation of privacy and overreach of jurisdiction. Karen's lawyers painted her as a concerned citizen, a selfless steward of neighborhood safety. They claimed the camera only ever pointed generally toward my home, and any movement was coincidental or automated. Then Savannah played the footage. We dimmed the courtroom lights and showed a thermal video of my silhouette walking through my bedroom, followed by a slow, unmistakable mechanical pivot of the camera outside. The room went still. Then came the admin logs. Timestamp after timestamp of Karen B. admin logging in, adjusting angles, and, on at least 3 occasions, using the app's zoom function while my bedroom lights were clearly on. "Can you tell the court," Savannah asked the forensic specialist we'd brought in, "what this pattern indicates?" The analyst didn't hesitate. Direct human control, coordinated tracking. These aren't preset sweeps. Someone was intentionally monitoring that window. Karen's team objected. Speculative. But the judge let it stand. Then Savannah called Karen herself to the stand. Under oath, Karen tried to play it cool. Claimed she was unfamiliar with the specifics of the surveillance interface and only occasionally logged in to check reports. But when presented with her own emails and app data, her confidence cracked. "So, you deny you zoomed in on Mr. Raines's window?" "I may have adjusted it for focus 17 times. I didn't keep track." "Your software did." Silence. Outside, the press waited like vultures, but inside, Karen was bleeding credibility by the minute. The judge called for a recess, and I sat back in my chair, staring at the spot where she'd stood, shoulders tense, face flushed, her perfect suburban armor full of holes. And this was only day 1. Day 2 started with a bang. Savannah wasted no time. Our first witness was a former HOA board member, a man named Daniel Flores, who, judging by his demeanor, had spent the last 6 months regretting ever voting for Karen. He was a wiry, soft-spoken accountant with nervous hands and a moral compass that had finally decided to point north. He took the stand and cleared his throat. I joined the Timber Ridge HOA board last year. At first, it was about community gardening and mailbox design standards. Then Karen started pushing for expanded surveillance. She called it her Neighborhood Eyes initiative. Savannah leaned in. Was there a vote on the camera placement? Daniel nodded. There was. But the placement near Mr. Raines's property wasn't what we approved. The board authorized perimeter monitoring, entry points, sidewalks, common areas. But Karen installed the camera on a different pole, closer, higher, aimed. Wrong. Did anyone object? A couple of us did, but she told us it was temporary, that she had received reports of suspicious behavior. What behavior? Daniel looked down. None. There were no reports. She just didn't like him. That hit like a brick in the courtroom. Karen's lawyer objected again, arguing that motive was speculative, but Daniel's testimony, backed by HOA minutes and email exchanges, painted a clear pattern. Karen had overridden her board to pursue her own paranoia. Next came Emily, my neighbor. Single mom, braver than most. She'd been hesitant to testify, worried about social fallout, about Karen retaliating, but once she sat down, there was no stopping her. She asked me to give her access to my own home security camera, Emily said, voice steady. She said it was for safety, but when I asked why she needed the angle that faced my back patio, she just smiled and said, some people think their fences are invisible. The courtroom murmured. The judge asked for order. And after you declined, she installed her own, without permission, facing the same spot. Karen's attorney tried to impeach her credibility, asking if she had any personal conflict with the HOA president. Emily didn't flinch, just the part where she threatened to cite me for non-conforming patio furniture 2 days after I said no. The cracks in Karen's defense widened into craters, but the killing blow came from an unexpected place. Savannah had gotten the court to issue a subpoena for third-party data, the cloud backups from the camera contractor Timber Ridge used for remote footage. Most of it had been wiped when Karen ordered a system reset, claiming memory overload. But, as any decent IT forensics team will tell you, deletion isn't destruction. Recovery takes time, but we had time. And what we got was damning. A screen lit up in the courtroom. One by one, still frames taken automatically during camera zoom events flashed across the monitor. A figure changing shirts behind drawn curtains. A moment at twilight when I walked into the bedroom, unaware of the tiny red eye outside. A guest, just a friend, pulling the curtain back for air. Each image stamped, logged, and geolocated. No nudity, nothing graphic, but invasive, intimate, unquestionably private. Savannah let the silence sit like a weight. Then she turned to Karen. Ms. Blight, were you aware that the camera was capable of capturing these images? Karen was pale. Her hands trembled slightly. No, I didn't realize the zoom was that powerful. And yet you used it repeatedly. I thought I was protecting the neighborhood. By watching Mr. Raines undress? Her lawyer objected, demanded a recess, but the damage was done. Even the judge looked rattled. I want a full technical analysis submitted, he said, eyes on Karen now. And I want the DA present tomorrow. If what I've seen today holds, we're not just looking at civil liability anymore. The gavel came down, but the weight in the room didn't lift. Outside, the courthouse had turned into a media circus. Headlines were already sprouting like weeds. HOA president accused of peeping on professor. Zoom feature zooms trouble for Timber Ridge. From neighborhood watch to watch listed. I didn't speak to reporters. I didn't gloat. I just walked home, straight-backed, the air colder than when I left. Karen had built a prison of her own design, brick by brick, camera by camera, and now it was closing in. The final day of the trial felt nothing like the others. It was quiet, focused. Even the reporters had stopped crowding the hallways with wide-eyed energy. Now they waited with the patience of hunters, cameras slung low but ready. Inside the courtroom, you could hear shoes scuffing carpet, the squeak of a worn leather briefcase being opened. Karen sat at the defense table, drained of her usual smug precision. No pastel today, just gray. Her hands folded, knuckles white. The jury took less than 4 hours. They returned to their seats without looking at her. Or at me. I stood anyway. You stand, even if your knees don't want to. The foreman, a woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense tone and a posture like she'd coached high school volleyball for decades, delivered the verdict. We, the jury, find in favor of the plaintiff, Adam Raines. Not a sound, not a breath. In the matter of unlawful surveillance, We find the defendant, Timber Ridge Estates HOA, and Karen Blight individually liable. Savannah didn't smile. She just nodded once, sharp like she was confirming what physics had already proven. The damages: $250,000 in compensatory relief from the HOA, plus a $25,000 personal fine leveled against Karen for malicious abuse of authority. The judge didn't mince words during sentencing. "You weaponized community infrastructure to violate the privacy of a neighbor," he said, voice clipped and cold. "Then you filed a claim against him when he defended himself. That is not governance. That is intimidation. This court won't endorse it." Then came the mandates. Every HOA camera that pointed toward any private property not explicitly under HOA jurisdiction to be either removed or re-angled under supervision by a third-party inspector within 30 days. Karen, permanently removed from her position as HOA president, barred from serving on any future HOA or neighborhood board in the state of Oregon. The judge emphasized that clause twice, and then he dropped a final, unexpected hammer. "I am forwarding the findings of this trial to the district attorney's office. The conduct detailed here may fall under criminal codes for illegal surveillance and digital intrusion. It is not this court's place to determine guilt beyond this case, but I believe a deeper review is warranted." Karen didn't speak, not even when the courtroom cleared. Outside, the air felt thinner, lighter somehow. I stepped out into the cold sun and was greeted not by a mob of reporters, but by a single cheer from the far end of the courthouse steps. It was Curtis, waving a flask. I didn't drink it, not yet, but I raised my hand to him. Over the next 48 hours, Timber Ridge detonated from the inside. 3 board members resigned within a day. A 4th posted a rambling Facebook apology, insisting they had no idea Karen was abusing the system, which was promptly dissected by Reddit and turned into a meme. The HOA's legal team tried to issue a watered-down statement, but by then it was too late. News networks picked it up. Phrases like "peeping president" and "suburban spygate" started trending. Someone dug up footage of Karen giving an HOA meeting lecture 2 years ago titled "Surveillance is Safety." It didn't age well. The backlash wasn't just digital. Several residents filed motions to formally withdraw their properties from HOA coverage, citing negligence and reputational harm. A community vote was scheduled to dissolve the existing board entirely. I didn't attend it. I had no interest in watching Karen's kingdom fall brick by brick, but Emily texted me from the meeting. Just one line. They booed her off the stage. I had one final conversation with Savannah before she flew back to Portland. "Don't celebrate too hard," she said. "She's not done, but she's been defanged, and the DA might finish the job." "I'm not celebrating," I said. "I'm watching." "Same thing sometimes," she replied, then smiled. That night, I stood at my bedroom window, the same one that started it all. No blinking red dot, just glass and sky. I pulled the curtain wide and let the light pour out. For the first time since moving in, I didn't feel watched. I felt seen. It's strange how silence sounds different when it belongs to you. The days after the trial passed like smoke. No more late-night scans of the tree line. No more emails from HOA reps asking me to reconsider my tone. No more blinking red eye staring through my bedroom window, waiting to record my existence in infrared. I woke each morning with the sun pouring in freely, curtains wide open. Not because I had something to prove, but because I no longer needed to hide. The camera was gone. So was Karen. Word spread fast. She'd left town, sold her house in Timber Ridge under a trust name, and vanished into whatever gated community still believed in her brand of control. Someone online joked she'd probably end up president of a retirement HOA in Arizona, where she could spy on bingo games. The memes never stopped. Her face, photoshopped onto Big Brother posters, the caption, "Karen is watching," or my personal favorite, one where her face was stuck inside a baby monitor with the title, "Live from Bedroom 2." I didn't laugh at most of them, not out loud. But damn, some were clever. I kept teaching at the university. The case made me a minor celebrity in legal circles. I even did a guest lecture titled "Privacy in the Age of Smart Paranoia," and afterward a student came up and said, "You're the HOA guy, right? My grandma's obsessed with your story." Well, not how I expected to be remembered, but I'll take it. But the part that stayed with me wasn't the attention. It was what came next. The precedent we set during the case. It was cited in 4 lawsuits in the first 3 months. Savannah sent me everyone. In Phoenix, an HOA was forced to take down drones surveilling rooftops. In Connecticut, a woman won damages after a neighborhood security cam recorded her in her hot tub. The phrase Rain's Clause even started appearing in some policy drafts, shorthand for "you do not point tech at private spaces, period." That made it worth it. Emily and I stayed in touch. She eventually ran for the newly formed Timber Ridge HOA board. This time by community vote. She won by a landslide. Her first act? Rewriting the surveillance policy from scratch. No camera could be installed without explicit neighbor consent, third-party privacy audits, and a community forum vote. And the cameras that remained? Their live feeds were made accessible to all residents, with clear logs showing who accessed what and when. Sunlight. That was the key. A month later, she dropped by with her son to thank me. We stood in my kitchen while her kids stared at the shelves full of true crime books like they were comic books. "I think you broke the spell," she said. Karen's. No, the neighborhoods. People stopped talking to each other. Everyone was scared of being watched or reported. Now they're planting flowers again, hosting potlucks, waving. Waving, I said, is an underrated social revolution. I installed one final thing on my property. Not a camera, not a sensor. Just a small sign beneath my bedroom window. It reads, "Looking in, you might want to check the statute first. Tourists, mostly internet sleuths, come by sometimes and take pictures. I let them. They're polite. Most of them are just trying to see the place where the whole thing unfolded. I don't mind, as long as they stay on the sidewalk." One day, I got a letter in the mail, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once. I overstepped. I see that now. I was trying to protect a world that didn't need protecting. I hope someday you'll believe I meant well. K. It wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. I stared at the letter for a long time. Then I slid it into a folder marked Closure and left it there. Not to forget, but to archive, like everything else, because this wasn't just a war over property lines and pixels. It was about space, human space, and the price of letting fear turn fences into walls and neighbors into informants. Now I sleep with the windows open again. I read by the light of the moon. And when I walk through the house, barefoot and unguarded, I remember what it felt like to look over my shoulder every night, and I never take for granted that I don't have to anymore. Privacy isn't a luxury, it's the baseline. And now, because of all of this, it's mine again.